The impossible news. Ethan Carter woke up to the sound of his phone vibrating on the nightstand. It was still dark outside, and the soft glow of the screen lit up his small apartment bedroom. His eyes were barely open when he saw the number of missed calls. Over 100. "What the?" he muttered, rubbing his face. Most of the calls were from one contact. Zythra. The name sent a chill down his spine. Zythra was no ordinary woman. She was a Veneri supermodel, a celebrity across the galaxy. Her emerald skin, golden eyes, and perfect features made her the face of beauty in the universe. But why was she calling him so much? Ethan was just a human biologist, working on alien genetics for research. He had met Zythra once at a science event 6 months ago. They talked a little, nothing more. So why was she calling him like this? His phone buzzed again. Incoming call. Zythra. He hesitated but then answered. Zythra. His voice was groggy. "What's going on?" The reply came in an excited, breathless voice. "Ethan, you got me pregnant." Ethan sat up so fast, he almost fell out of bed. "What?" He blinked. Sure he had misheard. "What did you just say?" Zythra laughed happily on the other side. "You heard me, human. I'm pregnant. And it's yours." Ethan's brain stopped working. This was impossible. Humans and Veneri were not biologically compatible. Their DNA sequences were too different. That can't be right," he stammered. "We never even—" "I know." Zythra cut in. "That's why this is incredible. We only talked at the event, but somehow your DNA has fused with mine. My doctors confirmed it." Ethan felt dizzy. He held his forehead. "This must be some mistake," he said. Maybe it's another Veneri's." "No, Ethan," Zythra said firmly. "The doctors ran tests. The baby's DNA has human markers. It's you. You're the father." Ethan's heartbeat pounded in his ears. How? It was scientifically impossible. Human Veneri hybrids could not exist. And yet, before he could ask more, a loud banging came from his front door. "Food." Thud. Ethan jumped. "What the hell?" Zythra gasped. "Ethan, are you home?" "Yes. Why?" He moved toward the door cautiously. "Don't open it," Zythra warned. "The Veneri security forces are coming for you." Foodie. Thud. Crash. The door burst open. 3 tall, armored Veneri soldiers stepped inside, their glowing blue visors scanning the room. Ethan froze. One soldier grabbed his arm. "Ethan Carter," the leader said in a deep voice. "You must come with us. Now." Ethan struggled. "Wait, I didn't do anything." The soldier's grip tightened. "Silence. You are under the authority of the Veneri Royal Court." Ethan looked at his phone. Zythra's voice came through, worried and urgent. "Ethan, don't resist. I'll explain everything. Just go with them." The soldiers dragged him out of his apartment. A large hovercraft was waiting outside. Neighbors peeked from their windows as the bright Veneri lights flashed across the street. Ethan's heart raced. What was happening? He wasn't just in trouble. He was at the center of something big. The last thing he saw before the hovercraft doors shut was the night sky above him, filled with stars. One of them, far away, was Veneria, the homeworld of Zythra. And he had a terrible feeling. He was going there soon. Taken to the stars. Ethan Carter sat in the cold metal seat of the Veneri transport, his wrists bound with glowing blue cuffs. The interior of the ship was sleek and advanced, smooth silver walls, humming energy panels, and a faint scent of something alien, like metal and citrus. His heart pounded in his chest. This was insane. He had been kidnapped by aliens. Not just any aliens. The Veneri Royal Guard. And all because of Zythra's impossible claim. "You got me pregnant, human." That sentence still echoed in his mind, twisting reality into something he could barely understand. He hadn't even touched Zythra. He had spent exactly one evening talking to her at an intergalactic science event. That was it. So how the hell was he the father of an alien child? The tallest soldier, the one in charge, stood near the front, watching him closely. The others sat in rigid silence, their hands resting near their weapons. These guys weren't taking any chances with him. Ethan took a deep breath. He had to stay calm. "Where are you taking me?" he finally asked. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. The lead soldier turned his glowing visor toward him. "To Venaria. Direct orders from the royal court." Ethan swallowed hard. Venaria, the Venari homeworld, a place few humans had ever seen. He let out a nervous laugh. "Right. And what happens when we get there? Do I get a lawyer or something?" The soldier didn't answer. The silence made Ethan's skin crawl. He glanced at his cuffs. The energy hummed softly, glowing in rhythmic pulses. They didn't feel tight, but when he tried to pull his hands apart, a sharp jolt of pain shot through his wrists. "Ow," he winced. "Okay, no pulling." A soft beep interrupted the tense silence. One of the soldiers pressed a button on the control panel. A hologram appeared in the air. Zythra's face. "Ethan," she gasped, relief filling her golden eyes. Ethan exhaled sharply. "Zythra, what the hell is going on?" She smiled, but her expression was full of concern. "I told you, Ethan. You're going to be a father." His stomach twisted. "That's impossible, Zythra. We barely know each other. We never." "I know," she interrupted, her voice softer. "But science doesn't lie." The doctors confirmed it. "You and I. Somehow, our DNA fused. This is real." Ethan shook his head, trying to grasp the reality of what she was saying. "But that's not why you're in danger," she continued, her expression darkening. "The Emperor is furious." Ethan frowned. "The Emperor? Your father?" "Yes," she said. "He believes this is a human plan to infiltrate the Venari bloodline. That humans are trying to take control of our royal family." Ethan blinked. "Wait, what? That's insane. I didn't do anything." Zythra nodded. "I know, but he thinks otherwise." Ethan could feel his pulse quicken. This was worse than he thought. It wasn't just about some strange scientific miracle anymore. It was about politics, power, control. "So what happens to me?" he asked. Zythra hesitated, then said, "If my father has his way, execution." Ethan's blood turned to ice. "Execution? For what?" he demanded. "Existing." Zythra shook her head. "For being something they don't understand." Ethan leaned forward, his restraints buzzing slightly. "You're royalty. Can't you stop this?" She bit her lip. "I'm trying. I told him you're not a threat, that you're important, that I want this child. But my father is afraid." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Afraid of what?" Zythra looked away for a moment before whispering, "That our child might be too powerful." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "What do you mean, powerful?" Zythra hesitated. "Venari genetics are complex. We are stronger, faster than most species. But something about the way your DNA combined with mine, it's different. The doctors say the child is evolving at an unnatural speed." Ethan's mind spun. A hybrid child. A genetic fusion that should be impossible. And now, an accelerated evolution. Before he could process it, the ship rumbled. A deep red light flashed across the cabin. A loud alarm blared, vibrating through the walls. Ethan snapped his head up. What the hell was that? The pilot cursed in Venari. "We're under attack." The lead soldier stood up quickly. "Shields up. Who is it?" The radio crackled. A robotic voice came through. "This is Commander Ralvik of the Zythra Dominion. Hand over the human." Ethan's stomach dropped. The Zythra. Zythra's voice came through the speakers. "No, Ethan, listen to me. You need to get out of there. The Zythra were one of the most feared species in the galaxy, tall, armored warriors known for their brutal ways. If they wanted Ethan, it wasn't for a friendly chat. The ship shook violently as something exploded nearby. Ethan gritted his teeth. Oh, come on. I didn't even know I was a dad 5 minutes ago, and now an entire alien race wants me dead. The lead Veneri soldier pulled out his weapon. Strap in, human. If the Zythra want you, that means you're more important than we thought. Ethan barely had time to process that chilling statement before the ship lurched hard to the left, sending sparks flying. Hold on, the pilot shouted. Outside the small viewing window, a massive Zythra warship appeared, its cannons glowing with deadly energy. And Ethan had a horrible feeling. They weren't planning on taking him alive. The galactic conspiracy. Ethan Carter braced himself as the Veneri ship trembled violently, warning lights flashing across the cabin. The Zythra warship loomed outside, its dark metallic hull gleaming against the backdrop of stars. The radio crackled again, and the deep mechanical voice of Commander Ralvik filled the ship. Surrender the human, and you may leave unharmed. Ethan's throat tightened. He wasn't sure what scared him more, the Veneri soldiers holding him prisoner, or the Zythra warship that wanted him even worse. The lead Veneri soldier, still gripping his weapon, turned to the pilot. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Do not respond. Asterisk asterisk. Do not respond. Ethan snapped. They're pointing a damn battleship at us. The soldier ignored him, turning to his squad. Battle formation. Protect the asset. The asset. That's what he was now. Silara's voice came through the speakers again. Ethan, listen to me. The Zythra don't just want to kill you. They're afraid of what you are. Ethan's stomach twisted. And what exactly am I? Before Silara could answer, the Zythra ship fired its plasma cannons. The blast rocked the Veneri transport, sending sparks flying. Ethan was thrown against the side of the cabin, his cuffs digging into his wrists. Shields are failing, the pilot shouted. Return fire. The commander barked. The Veneri ship spun sharply, maneuvering between blasts of energy. Outside, Ethan caught a glimpse of fighter drones deploying from the Zythra warship, swarming toward them like metal insects. Crap, he muttered under his breath. The pilot jerked the controls, dodging a direct hit, but another Zythra blast clipped the left wing, sending the ship into a violent spin. Ethan's stomach lurched as the artificial gravity flickered. We're going down, someone yelled. The ship plummeted toward a nearby moon, its surface covered in jagged mountains and deep canyons. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut as the ship slammed through the atmosphere, the hull glowing red-hot from the friction. The impact was brutal. Metal screeched, consoles sparked, and a deafening crash shook the entire cabin. Then, silence. For a moment, Ethan didn't move. His body ached all over, but he was still alive. Slowly, he opened his eyes. The cabin was tilted, sparks flickering from damaged consoles. The soldiers groaned as they pulled themselves up. The commander's visor flickered. Status: engines offline. Shields at 10%. Communications down, the pilot grunted. Ethan struggled against his restraints. Perfect. So, where exactly are we? The pilot checked his display. Light on 4. Uninhabited. No oxygen. Ethan blinked. Wait. No oxygen. The commander pressed a switch on his armor. A protective field activated around his body. Great, Ethan muttered. Of course you guys have fancy spacesuits. What about me? The commander didn't answer. Silara's voice suddenly crackled through the broken comms, distorted but desperate. Ethan, still alive? You, in danger. Zythra, find you. Then the transmission cut out. Ethan's heart pounded. If Silara could contact them, it meant the Zythra could too. They wouldn't stop until they had him. One of the soldiers turned to the commander. Sir, we have to move. Zythra search drones inbound. The commander nodded. Get the human. We're leaving. Leaving to where? Ethan demanded. We'll find shelter, the commander said. But if the Zythra take you, you won't be coming back. Ethan gritted his teeth. His life had gone from boring scientist to wanted fugitive across the galaxy in less than 24 hours, and he still had no idea why. As the soldiers helped him out of the wrecked ship, Ethan got his first look at Ladon 4. The sky was a dark shade of red, with twin suns barely visible behind thick storm clouds. Jagged black mountains stretched for miles, and powerful winds howled through the canyons. The ground beneath his feet was a strange metallic gray, and cracks of blue energy pulsed through the rocks. This place is a nightmare, he muttered. The commander motioned ahead. Move. They trudged across the barren landscape, the wind howling around them, kicking up sharp dust particles that stung against Ethan's skin. His lungs burned. The air was thin, even with the emergency oxygen mask one of the soldiers had reluctantly given him. Then, something moved in the distance. The soldiers immediately drew their weapons. A dark shape slid over the rocky terrain, moving unnaturally fast. Then another, and another. Ethan's chest tightened. Not Zythra. Something else. Identify, the commander ordered. One soldier pulled out a scanner. Unknown life forms, large, moving toward us fast. Ethan's throat went dry. Alien monsters, of course. Then, without warning, they attacked. The creatures burst from the dust, their black, armored bodies reflecting the dim light. They were huge, at least 10 feet tall, with long clawed limbs and rows of glowing red eyes. Their jaws split into 4 sections, revealing needle-sharp fangs. Ethan barely had time to react before the first one lunged. The Venari opened fire, blue energy blasts slamming into the creature, but it shrugged off the hits and kept coming. Run, one of the soldiers shouted. Ethan didn't need to be told twice. He bolted, heart hammering, as the monstrous creatures chased them through the rocky terrain. A soldier screamed as one of the beasts snatched him up, ripping him apart in seconds. Ethan ducked behind a boulder, panting. He wasn't going to survive this. Then suddenly, a deep hum filled the air. A ship descended from the sky, its sleek black surface marked with Zythra symbols. A voice boomed through a speaker. Human, come with us, or die here. Ethan's mind raced. He had 2 choices. Stay with the Venari and fight to the death. Surrender to the Zythra and find out why they really wanted him. Neither option looked good, but one of them might keep him alive. With one last glance at the monsters tearing through the Venari, Ethan stepped forward and raised his hands. A father's dilemma. Ethan Carter stood frozen as the Zythra ship descended, its sleek black hull humming with power. The monstrous creatures behind him continued their slaughter, ripping through the last remaining Venari soldiers. He had no choice. If he stayed, he'd be torn apart. With a deep breath, he raised his hands higher. All right. I surrender. A blinding blue energy beam shot from the Zythra ship, enveloping him. The world around him melted into light, and suddenly he was somewhere else. The Zythra warship. A prison of answers. Ethan hit the metal floor hard. The energy beam disappeared, leaving behind a sharp static sensation on his skin. The room was dimly lit, cold, and filled with dark, towering figures, Zythra warriors. Their black exoskeleton-like armor gleamed under the red emergency lights. They had no visible mouths, only a single glowing red eye in the center of their heads. Ethan pushed himself up, his wrists still cuffed. Great. Out of the frying pan, into the alien horror show. One of the Zythra stepped forward. He was taller than the rest, his armor more intricate. Ethan had a sick feeling this was Commander Ralvik. The commander studied him for a long moment before speaking. You are an anomaly, human. Ethan scoffed. Yeah, I get that a lot. A second later, pain ripped through his body. His cuffs sent a shockwave through his nervous system, making him collapse on the floor, muscles spasming. Ralvik tilted his head. I would advise against humor. You are in no position for it. Ethan groaned, his body trembling. Yeah. And what position am I in? Ralvik knelt beside him, his single red eye burning like fire. The most dangerous one in the galaxy. Ethan tried to laugh, but ended up coughing instead. Really, because right now I feel more like a helpless idiot. Ralvik ignored the comment. You think this is just about you? His voice was unnervingly calm. Your child is a threat to the balance of power in the universe. Ethan's stomach tightened. My child. Ralvik nodded. We have been watching the Venari for centuries. Their genetic advancements, their experiments. But what you and Silara have done. He paused. It is something far worse. Ethan gritted his teeth. I didn't do anything. Ralvik leaned closer. And yet, your DNA did. Ethan felt a chill run through him. Why does everyone keep saying that? Ralvik stood, pressing a button on his wrist. A holographic screen appeared, showing a glowing embryo, half human, half Venari. Strange blue energy pulsed around it. The child is evolving, Ralvik said, faster than anything we have ever seen. Ethan stared at the screen, his mind spinning. Evolving? What does that even mean? Ralvik studied him. It means that in just a few weeks, your child could become something beyond both humans and Venari, something that should not exist. Ethan felt his heartbeat pound in his chest. Ralvik's voice lowered. That is why the child must be eliminated. Ethan's blood ran cold. For a moment, he couldn't speak, couldn't move. You want to kill my child, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Ralvik didn't hesitate. Yes. Ethan's hands curled into fists. His body shook with anger. Over my dead body. Ralvik simply tilted his head. That can be arranged. The Zythra warriors stepped forward, weapons ready. Ethan backed up, heart racing. He was unarmed. Trapped. No way out. Then suddenly, alarms blared. The ship shook violently, throwing everyone off balance. A deep, roaring explosion echoed through the hallways. The comms crackled to life. We are under attack. Ethan looked up, heart pounding. What the hell? The ship's security doors slammed open, and standing there, in golden battle armor, was Silara. Her Venari eyes glowed fiercely, and in her hands were twin energy blades, burning like fire. Get away from my child's father. The escape. Silara moved like lightning. Before the Zythra guards could react, she sliced through two of them, their bodies hitting the ground with a metallic clang. Ethan stared in shock. Holy crap. Ralvik roared, his eye flaring red. You dare. Silara lunged at him, her blade clashing against his energy shield. Sparks flew as they locked weapons. Ethan. Move, she shouted. Ethan didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed a fallen Zythra weapon, a sleek, gun-like device, and fired. The energy blasted through another soldier, sending him flying. Silara and Ralvik continued their battle, trading blows too fast for Ethan to follow. The Zythra commander was strong, but Silara was faster. She ducked under a strike and drove her blade into his side. Ralvik staggered, dark energy leaking from the wound, but instead of anger, he laughed. You are already too late. Silara froze. What? Ralvik smirked. The Emperor has already decided. Ethan's stomach sank. Decided what? Ralvik's red eye gleamed. He has sent the order. The child is to be destroyed. Silara gasped. No. Ethan's blood boiled. He stepped forward, pressing the gun to Ralvik's head. You're lying, he growled. Ralvik smiled. Go to Venaria and see for yourself. Ethan's finger hovered on the trigger, rage burning inside him. Silara placed a hand on his shoulder. Ethan, we have to go. His jaw clenched. Every part of him wanted to pull the trigger, but they had bigger things to deal with. With a final glare, Ethan lowered the gun. "Let's go." Scilara grabbed him, activating a small holo device. In a flash of light, they vanished, teleporting out of the Zythra warship. A race against time. The moment they materialized inside a Venari escape cruiser, Scilara turned to Ethan, her expression full of fear. "They're going to kill our child, Ethan," she whispered. "We have to stop them." Ethan gripped the controls, his heart pounding. "Then let's get to Venaria." Because one thing was certain. He didn't know how this had happened. He didn't understand why. But one thing was very, very clear. No one, not the Zythra, not the Venari, not even the Emperor himself, was going to touch his child. The chase across the stars. The Venari escape cruiser shot through hyperspace, a streak of blue light cutting across the void. Ethan Carter sat in the co-pilot's seat, watching the star-streaked view with a mind full of chaos. His heart still pounded from what had just happened. Less than an hour ago, he had been a prisoner on a Zythra warship, hearing those horrifying words. "The Emperor has sent the order. The child is to be destroyed." Now he was flying at impossible speeds, heading straight for Venaria, a place where half the planet wanted him dead. Scilara was at the controls, her golden Venari eyes burning with fury. Her hands gripped the throttle, knuckles pale against her emerald skin. "We need a plan," Ethan said, breaking the tense silence. She exhaled sharply. "We don't have time for a plan." Ethan frowned. "Okay, not exactly comforting." Scilara took a sharp breath, her eyes flicking to him. "You don't understand, Ethan. The Zythra might want you dead, but my father, he's worse. He will do whatever it takes to keep our bloodline pure." Ethan leaned forward. "And what about you?" She hesitated, her fingers twitching slightly on the controls. "I don't care about the bloodline. I care about our child." Ethan felt something twist inside his chest. For weeks, he had been in denial that this was some mistake, some impossible scientific anomaly. But as he looked at Scilara, at the fire in her eyes, he finally understood. This wasn't just about him. It was about the life they had created. His jaw clenched. "Then we make time for a plan." Before Scilara could respond, the ship's warning alarms blared. "In Kyoming hostiles." Scilara cursed in Venari. "Damn it. They found us." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Who found us?" Sciara's eyes flicked to the radar. "Both of them." Ethan looked at the screen and felt his blood run cold. 2 ships were closing in fast. The Venari Royal Fleet, coming to take him to execution. The Zythra battlecruisers, coming to erase his child from existence. They were trapped between 2 enemies. And there was nowhere to run. The impossible escape. The Venari fleet hailed them first. A sharp, commanding voice filled the cabin. "Princess Scilara, power down your ship immediately. You will be escorted back to Venaria." Ethan muttered, "Oh great. Now we're officially you-will people." Scilara ignored him. She pressed the comms button. "Stand down, General Varric. I will not surrender." The voice responded coldly. "You do not have a choice." Ethan felt his fists tighten. "Yeah, I'm starting to really hate your people." Scilara shot him a glare, then tapped a button, cutting off the transmission. The ship rocked violently as the Zythra opened fire first. "Hang on," Scilara shouted, gripping the controls. The ship rolled sharply, dodging a plasma barrage. Ethan was slammed into his seat, his vision blurring as Scilara spiraled between the Venari and Zythra ships. "We're sitting ducks out here," Ethan shouted. "We need cover." Sciara's eyes flashed with an idea. "Hold on," she said. "I know where we're going." Ethan barely had time to ask where before Scilara yanked the controls, sending the ship plunging toward a nearby gas giant. The planet loomed ahead, its atmosphere a swirling storm of fire and lightning. "Scilara, that's a gas giant," Ethan said, gripping the seat. "As in, we'll die if we go in there." Scilara grinned. Only if we stay too long. Before he could argue, the ship dived straight into the storm. The storm run. The second they entered the gas giant's atmosphere, everything became chaos. Winds screamed against the hull. The ship shuddered violently as lightning crashed around them, arcs of blue fire lighting up the darkness. Ethan's vision blurred as the gravity pulled at his stomach. I hate this plan. Silara's hands flew across the controls. It's the only way to lose them. Outside, the Venari and Zythra ships hesitated. Their scanners wouldn't work inside the storm's interference. Ethan gritted his teeth. We better have a way out of this. Silara smirked. Of course. She pointed at a massive lightning vortex swirling far below. Ethan's eyes widened. Wait, you're not serious. Silara's grin widened. I am. With a sharp thrust, she pushed the ship straight toward the vortex. The ship rocketed downward, the pressure building, the lightning crackling in massive arcs around them. Then, at the last possible second, Silara flipped the ship into a tight spin, using the vortex's gravity to slingshot them out. The ship blasted free of the storm, soaring into open space. The moment they were clear, Ethan checked the radar and let out a breath. The Venari and Zythra ships were still inside the storm, scanning endlessly. They had lost them. Ethan slumped back in his seat, breathing hard. I'm never flying with you again. Silara laughed. You're welcome. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. All right. That bought us time. Now what? Silara's expression turned serious. Now, she said, we go to Venaria. Ethan frowned. Wait, we just escaped from your people, and now we're going back. Silara's gaze hardened. Yes. Ethan stared at her. Why? She exhaled. Because the only way to save our child is to change the Emperor's mind. Ethan blinked. I'm sorry, did you just say change the mind of a dictator? Silara nodded. Ethan let out a dry laugh. Yeah, that sounds totally easy. Silara's eyes gleamed. That's why we're not doing it alone. Ethan felt a chill of realization. You have a plan. She nodded. We need allies, and I know exactly where to find them. Ethan sat forward. Who? Silara's expression was deadly serious. The Venari Rebellion. Ethan's breath caught. There was a rebellion. Before he could ask, Silara pushed the engines to full thrust, setting course for Venaria. And deep inside him, Ethan knew. This was only the beginning. A child like no other. The Venari cruiser hurtled through hyperspace, slicing through the void like a blade. Ethan sat in the co-pilot's seat, his fingers gripping the armrests as the swirling blue tunnel of hyperspace surrounded them. They were heading straight for Venaria, not as prisoners, not as fugitives, but as something far more dangerous, rebels. Silara was at the controls, her golden eyes burning with purpose. She had spent the last hour explaining everything. There was a secret resistance on Venaria, a hidden network of Venari who opposed the Emperor's rule. They had been quietly growing in strength, waiting for a moment to rise. And now, Silara believed that moment had come. Ethan rubbed his temples. So let me get this straight. You're a princess. Your father, the Emperor, wants to kill me and our child. But instead of running, we're going to meet a secret rebellion to start a civil war. Silara smirked. Basically, yes. Ethan exhaled. Great. Love that for us. The ship's navigation panel blinked red. Incoming Terraenisanasaseon. Silara pressed a button. The screen flickered to life, and a hooded figure appeared, his face shadowed, his voice distorted. Princess, the figure said, you shouldn't have come back. Silara leaned forward. You told me to return when I was ready. The figure hesitated. Yes, but you come at a dangerous time. Your father has declared you a traitor. You are to be executed on sight. Ethan muttered. I feel like I should be more surprised. Silara's voice was firm. The Emperor is making a mistake. My child is not a threat. He is a future. The hooded figure was silent for a moment. Then he asked, "Do you have proof?" Zythra nodded. She pressed a switch on the console. A hologram of the unborn child appeared, floating in a shimmering golden light. Ethan stared in awe. The image showed a developing hybrid, unlike anything seen before. The child had the physical structure of a Venari, but his genetic code was something new, something that pulsed with a strange, glowing energy. The hooded figure exhaled sharply. This is impossible," he whispered. "No," Zythra said. "This is evolution." The figure remained still. Then he spoke. "Very well. Land at these coordinates. But be warned, Princess, the rebellion does not trust easily." The transmission cut out. Ethan leaned back. "I'm guessing this could go really well or really badly." Zythra smirked. "Welcome to Veneria." The ship burst out of hyperspace, and the world below filled the viewport. A massive golden planet lay before them, its surface shimmering under the light of twin suns. Veneria was breathtaking. Towering white spires, floating islands, and shimmering blue oceans. But beneath the beauty, Ethan could feel the tension. Because somewhere down there, an emperor was preparing for war. The rebellion's last hope. The ship descended into the shadows of a vast canyon, far from the imperial capital. Hidden beneath a series of holographic shields, a sprawling base came into view. Ethan's jaw tightened. This was not a small rebellion. Venari fighters, armed soldiers, and battle droids moved across the base, preparing for something big. As they landed, a squad of heavily armed rebels surrounded the ship. Ethan exhaled. "Here we go." The loading ramp lowered, and Zythra stepped out first, her golden eyes blazing with defiance. Ethan followed, keeping his hands visible. No sudden moves. The hooded figure from the transmission approached. As he stepped into the light, Ethan finally saw his face. He was older, battle-worn, with deep scars across his emerald skin. His piercing silver eyes studied them carefully. "Princess," he said. Zythra nodded. "General Varn." Ethan blinked. "General, this guy wasn't just a rebel. He was their leader." Varn's gaze shifted to Ethan. "And this is the human." Ethan sighed. "Yeah, that's me. The impossible father everyone wants to kill." Varn didn't smile. Instead, he motioned to a nearby building. "Come, we need to talk." The truth about the child. Inside the war room, a large holographic display showed the Imperial Palace. Ethan recognized the towering white structure from news reports. It was the heart of Venari rule. Varn folded his arms. "Your father's scientists have confirmed that your child is growing at an accelerated rate," he told Zythra. "You will be born in less than a week." Ethan's chest tightened. "A week." Varn's eyes locked onto Ethan. "Do you understand what this means, human?" Ethan exhaled. "No. And I feel like I'm about to." Varn tapped the hologram. A genetic model of the child rotated in the air. "This isn't just a hybrid," Varn said. "This is something new. Your child's DNA contains an unknown energy field, something we have never seen in any species before." Ethan's pulse quickened. "What kind of energy?" Varn's expression darkened. "Something powerful, dangerous. If the Emperor fears this child, he may have a reason." Zythra's fists clenched. "My father is a coward." Varn sighed. "Perhaps, but he is a smart coward. He knows what this child could become." Ethan leaned forward. "And what is that, exactly?" Varn studied him. "A ruler, a weapon, or something else entirely." Ethan's mind spun. His child, a ruler, a weapon. He had never felt more unprepared in his life. Zythra stepped forward. "Then we make sure he lives, no matter what." Varn was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. "If you're serious," he said, "then we will stand with you." Ethan felt a wave of relief. Then, alarms blared. A rebel ran into the room, panting. "General, the Imperial fleet just arrived in orbit." Ethan's stomach plummeted. Varn's expression hardened. "So, it begins." Silara turned to Ethan. "We need to get to the palace. Now." Ethan's heart pounded. "You want to go toward the army that's trying to kill us?" Silara's eyes burned. "Yes, because we're not running anymore." Ethan exhaled. This was it. They were about to face the Emperor himself. And this time, they weren't backing down. The dawn of a new era. The Venari night sky burned with fire as the Imperial fleet descended. Massive golden warships cast looming shadows over the rebellion's hidden base. Bright blue engines roared like thunder, their cannons primed and ready. Ethan Carter stood at the command table, staring at the holographic battlefield displayed before him. His heart pounded. They were outnumbered 10-1. Across from him, Silara stood tall, her golden eyes blazing with determination. The rebellion's leader, General Varn, folded his arms as he studied the approaching fleet. Around them, Venari warriors prepared for war. Ethan exhaled sharply. "Tell me we have a plan." Varn smirked. "Of course. It's just not a good one." Ethan muttered, "Fantastic. Let's hear it." Varn tapped the holographic map. "The Imperial forces are focused on us. That means the palace will be lightly guarded. We use the chaos of battle to infiltrate the Emperor's stronghold." Ethan's stomach twisted. "And once we get there?" Silara's jaw tightened. "We confront my father. He must see that this war is pointless, that this child is not a threat. He is the future of our people." Ethan frowned. "And if he doesn't listen?" Silara's golden eyes darkened. "Then I take the throne myself." A heavy silence filled the room. Varn let out a low chuckle. "I always liked you, Princess." Ethan swallowed hard. This was it. The final confrontation. Outside, the first Imperial strike ships hit the surface. The war had begun. They had no time left. The assault on the palace. As explosions rocked the battlefield, Ethan, Silara, and a small team of elite rebels flew a stolen Venari transport toward the Imperial palace. The capital city sprawled before them. Massive white towers, glowing spires, and floating platforms. The palace itself was a colossal fortress, its golden walls shimmering under the twin suns. But something was wrong. Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Where are the guards?" Silara frowned. "This is too easy." Varn cursed. "It's a trap." Before Ethan could react, the air itself seemed to twist. A massive energy barrier flared into existence around the palace, trapping their ship inside. And then, they appeared. Dozens of Venari royal guards emerged from the shadows, their armor black and gold, their energy blades humming with deadly light. At the center of them stood a figure Ethan recognized instantly. The Emperor himself. Tall, powerful, his emerald skin lined with centuries of wisdom and ruthlessness. His golden robes flowed around him as he watched them with cold eyes. "You have made a terrible mistake, daughter." Silara stepped forward, unafraid. "The only mistake is yours, father." The Emperor's expression remained unreadable. "You bring war to our doorstep. And for what? A child that should never have existed." Ethan stepped beside Silara. "You're afraid of something you don't understand." The Emperor's gaze flicked to Ethan, his golden eyes narrowing. "You are nothing but an accident, a genetic flaw that must be corrected." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. "You don't get to decide that." The Emperor exhaled, as if disappointed. Then he raised his hand. "Kill them all." The battle erupted. The fight for the future. Silara moved like lightning, her energy blades clashing against her father's guards. Sparks flew as Ethan dove for cover, grabbing a fallen blaster. The room became chaos. Varn and his rebels fought fiercely, cutting through the royal guards, but more kept coming. Ethan fired rapidly, his heart pounding. Silara faced her father directly. Their blades met in a furious dance, golden light flashing as they clashed again and again. "You always wanted power," the Emperor growled. Silara's eyes blazed. "No, I want justice." Their blades locked together, sparks crackling between them. Ethan barely had time to react before a powerful force slammed into him. He hit the ground hard, pain exploding in his ribs. A guard loomed over him, blade raised. And then, everything stopped. A golden light filled the room. Ethan gasped. The air crackled with energy. The Emperor stumbled back, eyes widening in shock, because standing at the center of the room, bathed in pure radiant power, was the child. The birth of something new. A deep hum filled the palace, shaking the very foundations of the city. The child, small, delicate, yet impossibly powerful, hovered in the air, his tiny form pulsing with a strange, beautiful light. Ethan could barely breathe. This isn't possible. Silara's eyes were full of tears. "He's here." The Emperor staggered back. His voice was filled with something Ethan had never expected. Fear. This thing should not exist. The child opened his eyes, brilliant golden orbs filled with knowledge beyond time. Then he spoke. "I am the future." A wave of energy erupted from him, blasting through the palace, sending the Emperor and his guards tumbling to the ground. Ethan shielded his face as the light flooded everything. And then silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, the palace was changed. The Emperor lay motionless, his golden robes torn, his power broken. The royal guards had dropped their weapons. And standing in the center, his tiny hands reaching toward Silara, was the child. Silara fell to her knees, cradling him. Tears streamed down her face. Ethan slowly approached. His voice was hoarse. What happens now?" Silara looked up at him, her golden eyes filled with newfound purpose. "Now," she whispered, "now everything changes." Ethan looked at the child, the first of his kind. And deep inside, he knew the universe would never be the same again. Epilogue. The New Age. The Emperor's reign had ended that day. Silara took the throne, not as a dictator, but as a leader who would guide her people into a new era. Ethan. He became something he never expected. A father. Not just to a child, but to a legend. As he stood on the palace balcony, looking out at the stars, he knew one thing for certain. Humanity was no longer just another species in the galaxy. They were something more. And their story was just beginning.